Namaste. Really sorry for the delay. Thank you, Tenzin. Thank you, Tanya, for waiting. So, let's begin. Sarvamangalamangale Shive Sarvartha Sadhike Shranye Trambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. Hello. So, the discussion, the main topic of the day is the role of women in the rituals in the ancient Indian practice. So, first of all, what are the rituals that we are talking about? Rituals mainly in the ancient practice are generally connected to the fire ceremonies. First of all, do not think the moment I say whenever you have, hi Namang, whenever you have this whole discussion about rituals, do not associate them to something that is only religious. Ritual is generally like the daily things that you would do, something that deepens your spiritual practice. For example, you wake up in the morning, early in the morning to have your asana practice. So that is, if it is done very regularly, that is a ritual, right? But when we look at some very significant rituals, they have the ability to deepen the spiritual practice. Most importantly, the rituals which are connected to the fire ceremonies, rituals which are mainly the daily chantings, meditations, and asana practices. So, how is this in the practice in connection to the females? So, if you observe yesterday's in the last session's discussion, we were discussing about two major terms that are used for female practitioners. One is called Brahmavadini, the second one is called Sadyovadhu. Brahmavadini is the one who is initiated having the Brahmopadesha or Upanayana. So I want you to get this word, Brahmopadesha or Upanayana. First that initiation is done, and then probably in the long run she may get into the marriage and other aspects. So in that case, first she got initiation, and then she will go to the other aspects. So here the other term, that is Sadyovadhu, who is into the marriage system first, in the materialistic world first, and then probably in the long run she may turn into some deeper spiritual practice. So the important word here is Upanayanam. Upanayana is called, like, look at the word that is used here, Upanayana. So this is a Nayana is eyes. Upanayana, something that is deeper perspective. So the one who gets this diksha or initiation is also called Dvija. So these terms are very, very important. Dvija means the one who got the second birth. Ja means Jayate. Jayate means the one who has the birth. The physical birth everybody will have, right? It is very normal to have the physical birth. We just have our own birth and then we continue our journey. But the moment you have some spiritual initiation, diksha, then that means you have a second birth. So generally at the age of 8, there are different age levels for different levels of spiritual practices. But generally the earlier one is at the age of 8. Hello. At the age of 8, you have first or the most important Upanayana. Upanayana is generally a day ritual, the day ceremony, where you will get, mostly if you see the thread, the major thread that you will see in Patabijoy's classes also you might see, and this is generally associated with the Brahmins. Today it has become a casting. So you will get this thread. So from that day onwards, you will also have a Brahmopadesha. Brahma. If you have been in the teacher training, you know Brahma is consciousness. Upadesha is initiation. So you have a consciousness initiation. So this is generally done for people who want to get into the spiritual practice. Now, the beauty is this was not a gender specific. So, this Brahmopadesha is done for anybody who wants to get into the spiritual practice. Most often, what happens is at the age of 8, the kid may not be able to decide what she or he wants, right, at the age of 8. So, generally, there is a family practice that they will give that initiation. But there are people who will get that initiation at the later stage also. They did not know the value of it. And then now that they are seriously exploring spiritual practices, they get that initiation later also. So I want you to look at somebody called Vamadeva Shastri, who was an American. Later look into Vamadeva Shastri, an American who got this initiation purely, properly, just like any spiritual practitioner who has got the initiation later in the adult stage, but completely deepening his practice. So these are the cases where some people realize the importance of this Brahmopadesha or Upanayana later and they get in. But if you observe these two terms, Brahmavadini and Sadyovadhu, say that for both of them, this initiation or Brahmopadesha is common. There are some passing remarks where you can see these instances. For example, in the story of Rama, when Rama's Pattabhisheka, or when he is becoming there was all the arrangement. Those who know the story a little, I give you a basic. So he is the prince, the first elder son of Dasharatha, who is at the moment is a prince, and he is going to probably become a king, and then he does not become a king. That is different story. But the whole celebrations are getting ready in this kingdom called Ayodhya, where there is a day which is decided for his transition from prince to a king. And in this whole duration, in the story of Valmiki Ramayana, you will see that Kausalya, the mother of Rama, of Sri Rama, she is performing some rituals, very specific rituals for the greater good of Sri Rama, as her own son is becoming a king. So you see the reference there that Kausalya, the mother of Sri Rama, is practicing some very specific rituals. So this is one instance where you can easily see that these kind of many different practices are very common. When I say very common, common in the places where people were more interested, not everywhere. Another reference, first I will give you the references and then we'll come back to the general discussion. Another place that you will see that there was a lady who was practicing rituals is in the story, in the same Rama's life story, where Rama meets somebody called Sugriva, and this is in the story. Okay, maybe sometimes we can also discuss about the whole story of Rama and the story of Ramayana. So in that story, you need to know the story. Just hold on to this particular example and then we'll come back. Rama is allying with a king called Sugriva, and he is going to fight with somebody called Vali. Vali and Sugriva were supposed to be the brothers. They were brothers, but now they are fighting with each other. Rama is taking the side of Sugriva. The other side, Vali, when he is about to fight, at that time, Tara is the wife of Vali, and she makes a few days of rituals before the battlefield, the war takes place. So in that reference also you can see that Vali's wife is into the rituals. So these are very specific rituals for the goodness, for the victory in the war, or things like this, where you have a very specific benefit expected. So in instances like this, you will see people are specifically females into many different rituals. Most often they are these rituals are called as yajnas, the fire ceremonies, yajna, homa, havana, different names, but specifically these are fire ceremonies. There are many cases where you can see that the females are into this. But the broader question is, why do I have to bring few references to show that there were females also doing this. That itself shows that it was not very much in common. Otherwise, I may have to give you the references of Rama doing the rituals, or maybe Rama's wife Sita is doing the rituals. Sita also does some rituals. You have a reference. Just the references also, they show that it was not very much in common. This does not mean that females were not into these kind of practices. There were many females who were into these practices, but it is not very common for sure. We had a very recently in one of the teacher training courses, we had this discussion why there were less. If you look at broadly the history of mankind, starting from the cave life of human beings, after a certain time, probably because physically men were more capable, and our men in general, though it is not a gender thing, you will have men having slightly more dominance of intellect, which is a very sun energy form, and most often, exceptions are always there, and it is not a gender specific, and mostly females who are having more of moon dominance, or maybe because of the way they were able to protect the family. Most often men went out to bring the food on the table, and it's a vicious circle. Once you go out and start doing all of this, like to hunt and bring the food, you cultivate that quality a lot. Once you are at home and taking care of the family, that particular energy is cultivated more, and then that is biologically transmitted to the next generation, and then there is a society that is built based on this. So this is like a vicious circle. Slowly in the next 3, 4, 5 generations, there is a very social conscience that is built, that if you are a female, you will be at home. If you are a man, you will go out, and slowly that becomes a norm, and there will be a few who may go out of the box and do things differently. For example, you will have some cases where men took a back seat, kind of, or either they were not capable of ruling the kingdom. There are instances wherein recent history in the Karnataka state where I belong to, in the recent history, there was a princess, a queen called Chennamma, who was fighting with the British during the British invasion, the independence struggle and all, where probably the men were not that capable, and she was really good in leading the kingdom. So once it becomes like a circle, a social conscience is built, then you have to be exceptionally good, and you have to have an out of box thinking to explore the other side of you. As we see today in the today's world, you have more female practitioners, female yoga practitioners, to be very specific, female asana practitioners coming in. It is not really because of a gender, it is mostly because of the opportunities that we get. And once you have certain opportunities, you explore. Imagine this. Let me know if you have any questions. I can see the charts here. What happens is, if you are a female, let's say Anne Sophie is here. Let's say Anne Sophie is practicing asanas and pranayama and meditation, and she's teaching yoga. She's a very good teacher. She has her own center, and probably her kids will look at this, and maybe her daughter will think that I want to be like my mom, and that's where there is an idea that I can be like this. When you have very rare examples, only probably their kids or maybe people around, some females who are looking at you as a role model, then they think to be like you, and that's how a slight change happens. So when you have a norm, untold norm in the society that females are meant for this, males are meant for this, then slowly, without knowing, we start getting into. If you are a man, you should be bringing the food on the table. That becomes a norm. Even though nobody is saying it, that becomes a norm. So this has been happening everywhere, and Indian society was also no exception here. But one thing that stands out in the entire spiritual practice and in the culture of this land is, even though there were exceptions of females taking part in these kind of practices, they were there. In the recent history of the last 2000 years, you can see many yoginis or brahmavadinis coming into the mainstream. Um, but we will see this recent history in the upcoming discussions. But in the older times also, for example, in the last session we were discussing about Maitreyi and how she was with Yajnavalkya. She is one of the prominent Brahmavadinis. How she started exploring the spiritual practices, and she became one of the finest yoginis, highly respected in the world of yoga. So there are instances where you have yoginis or brahmavadinis. Also, you have queens who have shown their muscle power or the physical and mental strength also. But what happens is, we need to put up examples. As men and women of this time, if you are putting up an example, that's where the change happens. If somebody, if my daughters, I have two daughters, and most of you know how concerned and know how interested I am in taking care of them. We need to put up right examples of men and women doing the right things. Only then, one genetically, one socially, they are able to look at broader things, looking at things out of the box. And this is precisely I had a question day before yesterday about what will be the future of yoga, asana, pranayama, meditation method practice. Do you think more females will be there? This is such an interesting topic, and I don't think I can conclude here. Just to start the seed of discussion, I strongly think that the next stage, for at least next few decades, will be like yoga and spirituality world will be dominated by females. It is not because I want more females to be in this practice. So it is about it is not about what I want. I strongly think that's how will be the case. And there is a very specific reason for this, and I conclude with this particular example, which is very interesting. When Buddha's teachings were very popular, and one of his disciples called Avalokiteshvara is one of the popular disciples of Buddha, and his teachings were very popular in China, right? And Avalokiteshvara was not in China. His lessons, his teachings were widespread in China. And then at that time, people were thinking that when Avalokiteshvara came, after his teachings were very popular and he came to Tibet in China, people were shocked to see that he is a male. Because teachings were such that they thought he must be a female. So the moment they see, and they were not believing that this is a man who is saying all of this, which means it is not really about the physical gender, but it is about the cultivation of the emotion. There is a whole discussion of dropping the intellect and cultivating the emotion. Intellect always classifies, dissects everything. Emotion is the one that gives you the complete experience. So the spirituality has a lot of emphasis on dropping the intellect and cultivating the emotion. So that's why if you have more of feminish qualities, I'm nowhere associating the gender, physical gender, the female energy qualities, you are more equipped to experience the consciousness. And for this reason, you can see the depiction of Sri Rama, or the beautiful depictions of Sri Krishna, or any other god, so-called god ideas of Hindu religion, you will see mostly the feminist style. They are not with a mustache and a very Hercules body or something like that. They're more like a feminist qualities are expressed through their male forms. Even if you look at Buddha, so he looks more like a more beautiful, not handsome. You know, this is intentionally done because we want to showcase that it is that feminist, the moon quality, the water quality that brings you closer towards the consciousness so that you can experience the completeness, the integral existence of the soul that is within. So, because of this kind of nature, there is possibility of more females, and also because females are generally in large number right now, and I strongly believe, and I think this is a very positive step that we are into, that has happened organically in the last um, few years, at least in the last 20 years, how females are stepping in more into the yoga and spirituality practice. Whenever I say male and female whole discussion, we are just trying to understand the roles of females, but this has nothing to do with the male and female bodies. So one last point before we conclude, whenever you look at, in a real sense, whenever you look at anyone, any yogi or yogini, you should not be associating a physical gender that they carry, physical body that they carry. So if you look at Dalai Lama, Dalai Lama should be a yogi for you, not a male yogi for you. You know what I mean? The moment you associate his consciousness practice with the physical body, you're actually losing the entire substance, the essence of his practice. If you look at Mirabai, or if you look at Maitreyi also, it is an insult to Maitreyi to look at her as a female. She is beyond the male and female dualities. So we should not be identifying any soul who is in the spiritual journey with the physical expressions of it. So in yoga and spirituality, that discussion should not arrive that whether somebody is a male or a female. However, before we reach that stage, we need to know whether more physically more females or males are there in the practice. So in the upcoming days, please drop me the questions if you have any. Hi Jayanti, Taruni, wonderful to see you here. Please drop me a comment or a question if you have. The upcoming ideas are to discuss about the recent history. I'm talking about only the time of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So in the next discussion, we discuss a little bit on a very fascinating lady called Krishna, who is also known as Draupadi, who is a fantastic lady, about her, and this is in Mahabharata. And one more very interesting subject about three women. They are three sisters together called Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. This is also in Mahabharata. And so the next session will be about Mahabharata and the females' domination there, and then we'll come to the recent history, what has happened, and of course there is a decline. What are the major reasons of decline? I'm no history expert, just understanding the basic history and trying to have a discussion here, and I'm nowhere concluding that this is how the women's role has been. If you have something that I'm missing, please always make sure that you put it in a comment and we can come back. And I could be sometimes completely wrong, and I'll come back with proper explanation, or maybe accepting that I didn't know that. Thank you very much. Sorry for a minute, 2 minutes delay in the beginning. See you tomorrow. Yeah, we will talk about a little more on dropping the intellect after this whole series of females and spiritual practice is over. We will see that. So every day at 8 o'clock at the same time, for the next few days in this Navaratri festival, we'll be having this discussion. Thank you so much for joining today. We'll discuss a little more on the story of Mahabharata and females in the next session. Until then, as I always say, Om. Bye.